Hello Raptors fans, and welcome back to Raptors Report. Today we'll be discussing the Toronto Raptors game against the Portland Trailblazers, but before we do that, we are going to be talking about another draft pick, a potential draft pick that the Raptors could go after in the later half of the lottery, so the 10 to 15 range. We've discussed a couple of players in this range. If the Raptors are to fall past 10, these are some of the guys that the Raptors will be looking at. So a lot of the comments when we talk about these types of players are upset that we haven't discussed some of the other players in this draft class. So they'll see that I'm discussing this player and they'll say, well, this other player is much better, and I've already covered that player. So I'll put all of the players that I've already covered, as well as some links in the description that allow you to look through all of the players that I've already covered, because I don't want you guys getting upset and thinking that I'm ignoring a prospect that you think deserves the attention of the Toronto Raptors or of this channel. So if you'd like, you can go through those videos and take a look. But the guy that we're going to be discussing today is Jeremiah Fears. And Jeremiah Fears is an 18-year-old 6'4" scoring guard who grew up in a suburb just outside of Chicago. He's actually a very interesting prospect because he kind of fast-tracked himself and became eligible early for college, and he looks it. If you ever see him in an interview or on the court and you take a look at his face, you're like, boy, this kid is a kid. He does not look like he is eligible to be drafted in this year's draft, but he is, and there's a reason for that, because he is a pretty exciting prospect that has some very distinct strengths and some very apparent weaknesses. He was a four-star prospect coming out of high school, and he joined the Oklahoma Sooners this season as a freshman. And one of the reasons he may have done that is because Oklahoma lost some of their backcourt in transfers, so it was kind of wide open for a guy like Jeremiah Fears to come in and get a ton of on-ball reps as their lead guard. And boy, has he ever risen to the occasion. And he has like an absolutely staggering 31% usage percentage as a freshman. So he is using a ton of possessions for the Sooners. And he has shown a pretty impressive level, especially for a young freshman. And why don't we get into his strengths and weaknesses? So first of all, the thing that is very apparent when you watch him play is that he has a command on the basketball that is pretty rare for a player of his age and his level of experience. So he has a very good handle on the ball, going left or right. So he is ambidextrous. He can use his left hand. It seems like he is more comfortable using his left hand, but he can go right as well. Very good command of the basketball. And he uses it in the pick and roll, where he has a very good ability to explode off of the dribble, attack the basket, and get into the lane. He has good body control. He is very good at using pace, speeding up, slowing down, and then getting into the body of the defender, drawing contact and finishing. He is good at the simple plays. He can dump the ball off to an open roll man. He can kick it out to his teammates for three. And he does have good athleticism. So good first step, a bit of pop as a vertical athlete, and his size for position is decent. He is 6'4" with, you know, a pretty developed body, especially for a youngster, a guy who is quite young. He definitely has an NBA caliber body, I would say. He uses the pick and roll very well, but he is a bit of a ball pounder. Many of the possessions start off with the ball in his hands, and he'll dribble the ball at the top of the arc and direct traffic, call for screens, tell players to go this way and that way, and set up what he is going to do for that play. And while that works for Oklahoma, and it is something that is impressive at 18 years old, that's not really how the NBA works these days, I would say. I think, especially if you're looking at the Toronto Raptors offense, there is very little ball pounding. Players get into the sets very quickly. The ball is passed around. There's not a lot of time where the ball is not moving around the court in some fashion. So that's something to keep an eye on. As an extension of that, when you watch him play, it's clear that he is more of a scoring guard. He is more of a guard that is looking to create for himself and is a guy that is trying to get to the basket and score, create pull-up shots for himself. Basically, he sees himself as the number one option in the offense, and he moves accordingly, which is not necessarily a bad thing. That's just how he plays. But I would say that his vision is a little bit of a question mark. When you watch him, he is good at the simple reads, as I've mentioned, but he also does not see players when they are very open. It takes him a second to recognize what is the best course of action. His teammates are kind of a secondary concern at this point, i.e. he gets tunnel vision a little bit. The big upside play here is the fact that his age is very young, and he is clearly very talented. And his jumper, while the percentages are not very good, his jumper does not look as bad as the stats indicate. So he's shooting 27% from three, which is not good, especially for a guard, especially for a lead guard. But he is shooting 85% from the line. And as I mentioned in the last video that I did with Danny Wolf, he's shooting a good percentage for a big at 35%, but the free throw percentage was only 60%. So I was thinking that perhaps that's a bit of a red flag, because those two metrics are usually pretty correlated with one another. And so if you're looking at him as a player with the potential to become a shooter at the next level, a high free throw percentage, which he has 85%, would indicate that that could be an area of growth for him. Another thing is that he does not catch and shoot very often. Catch and shoot, especially spot up shots, are usually a more efficient shot in a shot diet, so that will help raise your percentages on your three-point attempts. And he doesn't get to do that very often because the ball is primarily in his hands, and he is doing a lot of the creation. A lot of the threes that he takes are self-created, so that's something to keep in mind. And as I mentioned before, his usage, especially as a freshman, is very high, 31%. This is in the realms of the, top scoring guards in the NBA. So like the Jalen Brunsons, the Donovan Mitchells, the LeBrons, the Lukas, those kinds of guys are in the low to mid 30s. So he's taking 31% of his team's possessions, either through scoring or turnovers. And that is very high. And one of the things there that I mentioned, the turnovers, that is an issue for him at this stage in his career. Of course, a player who is scoring as much as he is, who's handling the ball as much as he is going to have a pretty high turnover rate, but it is a bit of a concern. 4 turnovers a game compared to only 5 assists a game. Not amazing, but at this point, remember, it should be just pounded into your head over and over and over again. This is a freshman. He is 18 years old. He is being asked to run a college offense at that age. And this is in the SEC. So the SEC is a good conference. This is not a rinky-dink operation here. He is running an offense in one of the better conferences in the NCAA. So clearly, at the next level, when you watch him play, his role is probably going to be as a scoring guard. And I think that the potential for him is as a first option. That would be his ceiling, as a guard scoring option, a guy who can dominate the ball and put points on the board and make your team a good offensive team. Being the lead guard, the number one option, is the most important role in the NBA. So the big downside with Fears is his secondary and tertiary skills. They need work. So his court vision, I would say, is a weakness right now. His defense is a weakness right now, and his shot from outside. As I said, I think that there's a lot of room for growth there, but at the moment, he is shooting 27%. Again, 18 years old, these are things that I think could improve, but you would have to work with him, develop him, get him better at the elements of his game that are not there yet. He needs to work on his secondary and tertiary skills so that he can utilize his strengths, which are ball handling, the ability to get into the lane, first step, scoring ability around the basket, and his ability to create an advantage in the half court and in the pick and roll. That is right there with the top players in this year's draft class. So there's obviously clearly a lot of upside, and you would be drafting him on that upside and hoping that you can fill in the blanks. If he improves his shooting, especially off of the dribble, you're looking at a guy that could be a star player, a star guard in the NBA. And I'm going to throw out a comparison there. This is, I think, a ceiling comp, a comparison where if he gets to where he needs to be on a various number of levels, a guy like Donovan Mitchell is somebody that I would be looking at. So also 6'4", also struggled shooting the ball in college, was not as efficient in his first season from 3. Also drafted within this range, so he was drafted 13th overall, Donovan Mitchell was, and that is kind of where you would be able to see, I think, Jeremiah Fears go in this year's draft class, probably in the 10 to 15 range. Those types of players, the Donovan Mitchells of the world, where you are looking at a guy with an extremely high skill level that's able to be a 3-level scorer, can score inside and out, and maybe is not like a true point guard, but has enough there that it's not going to hold your offense back. That's kind of what I'm seeing from him for his upside. For his downside, you're looking at another, sixth man type. So sixth men, as I've mentioned a couple times before, are kind of like a shooting guard that is not quite efficient enough or has big enough holes in their game that you don't want them being in the starting lineup, because the secondary and tertiary skills didn't get there. So they might not be very good defenders. They don't bring enough in terms of passing, because in the starting lineup, there's lots of mouths to feed. You want to make sure that everybody's getting a little taste. And if you're not efficient enough and you can't, help your team in other areas, guess what? You go to the bench and then you get to run the second unit. That's generally where the, star upside guards who don't quite pan out. I mean, there's guys who have been in the draft before who look like they could get there and become, star scoring guards like OJ Mayo and Jordan Clarkson. Jalen Green is trending in that direction. He looks like he has that trajectory moving forward. Guys who are one-dimensional scorers, who have the ability to get hot and take over a game through their scoring, but don't bring a lot else to the table, especially on the defensive end, especially from a playmaking perspective. That's, I think, his downside. But again, he's 18 years old. He's doing a lot. He is really, really taking on a huge burden right now. So a lot of the flaws that you see in his game that other prospects are able to sort of develop and then get better at, and then in their sophomore, junior, senior years, they're able to iron those things out, and you don't really see all of these issues. Those are coming to a fore with Fears just because he has been thrust into this big role. So his flaws as a player are on full display because he's being used so much and he's playing so many minutes. But that's not to say he can't improve, and I think that there's potential for him as a player. Now, because we're talking, a little later in the draft, you got to talk about fit a little bit more at this position, because at this position in the draft, in the late lottery, fit is something that you can start thinking about. It's more of a concern, because at this portion of the draft, generally the players that you're going to be picking around here are not going to be super duper stars that are immediately going to change the fortunes of a team. You're going to have to develop them. They're going to have to earn minutes. They're going to have to fit into lineups. So thinking about fit is something that you're going to have to consider. And I'm not sure if the fit for him on the Raptors is that amazing. I mean, they have Emmanuel Quickley, they've got RJ Barrett, they've got Jamal Shead, who I've really, warmed up on and think that he's a long-term member of the Toronto Raptors. So there are some ball handlers and guards who have a role on this team. But I think that if you were to perhaps, move a player, I think that there's been rumors circulating around that perhaps RJ Barrett isn't going to be here long term. Not to say I want that to happen, but if that were to happen, someone like Jeremiah Fears is somebody that would become more interesting. So shouldn't be out of the question to think about these types of players. In any case, that is the view of him as a prospect. I think he is a really exciting prospect, and I think he does have a lot of upside in terms of perhaps becoming, a lead guard. I think he has that type of potential. However, there are impediments to get there, and I want to know what you think about Jeremiah Fears and whether you like him as a prospect. Are there things that I haven't mentioned that you think are interesting elements of his game? Let me know here in the comments, because I want to hear what you think about him. And now we're going to get into the basketball game that the Toronto Raptors played last night. And it was actually a very exciting game, but let's get into the player evaluations. We're going to start this one off by talking about who I think was the best player in this game, and that was, I think, pretty easily Jakob Poeltl. Jakob Poeltl started the game off with a pigs flying moment, a mind-bending thing that I think would be the least likely outcome for an opening possession that you could think of. With the players who are on the floor, Jamal Shead, Ochai Agbaji, Jakob Poeltl, Scotty Barnes, and Jamison Battle, the least likely outcome for the first play of the game would be a Jakob Poeltl three-point shot make. That's crazy. No, the social media erupted when that happened. What the hell? I couldn't believe it. It's only his third three-point make of his career, his first of the season. The only other ones that really happened were, earlier on in his career when he was still kind of trying to figure out his role in the NBA with the Toronto Raptors. And then there were a bunch of, desperation heaves where he gets the ball at the top of the arc and there's no time left on the clock and it's go time. You got to put up a shot. And he's, not very accurate with those. But he had a fantastic game. 19 points on 13 shots, 1 of 1 from 3. He went 0 of 2 from the free throw line. So, he used up all his shooting juice on that 1 3-point shot. 8 rebounds, 5 of them offensive, 3 assists, 2 steals, 0 blocks, 3 turnovers, and just a commanding performance. And put the clamps on Donovan Clingan. And Clingan is a traditional big who is literally gigantic. He is 7'3", and he has a short neck too. If he had a normal sized neck, he'd be like 7'5" or something like that. He's just a beast of a man. But Jakob Poeltl just boxed him out, kept him away from the basket, didn't let him catch in the post and finish. Clingan finished with 5 points, 14 rebounds. And also Poeltl just did pretty much everything this game. He played amazing defense. He was helping to run the Raptors offense. He had a wicked full court slam dunk. He got the ball, I think it was a steal, and then he just brought the ball up the court, dribbled all the way to the basket, nobody picked him up, and he just jammed the ball home. So he had a number of wicked plays. I usually do not play any Jakob Poeltl highlights. I usually say, yeah, he had a really good game and kind of explain what he did, because his highlights are usually just a push shot and him grabbing rebounds and, moving his feet on defense. Like, you don't need to see a replay of that. That's kind of boring stuff that you need. Don't get me wrong, that's important. But last night he had like some really awesome plays and he looked like an all-star. He was easily the best player for the Raptors, best player on the court for either team. The next player we're going to discuss didn't have like an amazing statistical night, but I think was awesome. I think he had a really, really good game, and that's Jamal Shead. Jamal Shead started again last night, had 10 points on 3 of 5 shooting. All of his makes were from the 3-point line, which is amazing to see. This is literally, if he can do this kind of stuff, if he can hit threes, some of them were tough shots, like not easy shots, some like pull up 3 in transition. This guy has juice. This guy has some stuff going on here, and this might be a player you have to watch out for and start planning and thinking about as the Raptors start to grow and become a real team. You have to start penciling this guy into some of the conversations that you think about when it comes to roster construction and stuff like that. He's becoming like a player to watch out for. 6 assists, 1 steal, 0 blocks, 0 turnovers. So 6 assists, 0 turnovers, that's great. But more than that, just ran the show. Everything looked so smooth and good when he has the ball in his hands. He is making great reads. This guy is running the offense so well, just ticking all the boxes in terms of being a playmaker. And the 3-point shooting, fantastic performance from Jamal Shead. Next up, we'll go to Scottie Barnes. I think Scottie Barnes had a good game. He played 28 minutes. He had 16 points on 4 of 11 shooting. He was 0 of 1 from 3. He was 8 of 9 from the free throw line, so he did a good job getting inside. 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 6 steals, 0 blocks, and 5 turnovers. So there's an argument to be made that maybe, putting Jamal Shead ahead of Scottie Barnes, maybe Scottie Barnes deserves to be number 2 on this list, or maybe even number 1, although I think Jakob Poeltl had a better game, but 6 steals, that's crazy. He had a really good game, great defense. He is doing a really good job of being the roamer on defense. Jakob Poeltl is the main help defender, but of course Scottie Barnes is the secondary help defender who is roaming a little bit. He can obviously use his speed to close out on his man if it's needed, but he will patrol the paint. He will play the passing lanes. He'll come over and provide help on the perimeter, on the inside, whatever is needed. And he did a very good job on that end. And then on offense, I think he had a really solid night. 6 assists, you love to see that, albeit with 5 turnovers, but 16 points and getting to the line, being physical. I think he had a good game. After that, we'll talk about Ochai Agbaji. It's really good to have this guy back. He missed a whole bunch of games. He started in this one. He had 19 points on 7 of 15 shooting. He was 2 of 5 from 3. He was 3 of 3 from the free throw line. Very efficient night. 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, 0 blocks, 0 turnovers. Ochai Agbaji was also playing good defense. His ability to cut has been sorely missed with the Raptors when he was gone, because he is a great off-ball mover. He's good in transition. Colin Castleton hit him with a really nice pass in transition, and he just fills the break so nicely and makes himself available for passes. Getting to your spots and really competing off of the ball is what pays off the vision of the players on the team like Scotty Barnes, and the post players like Jakob Poeltl, and the guards on the team too. Primary ball handlers, guys who have the ball and are playmakers, love to play with guys like Ochai Agbaji, because you can pass it out to them and they can hit a 3, or they're trying to create baskets by using their movement and getting to spots where the defense isn't, and then you can reward them with an easy pass for a bucket. So you're getting your primary ball handlers and passers and connectors assists for free with just your movement and ability to shoot. And then on defense, he's a very solid defender. I love what he brought last night. Jamison Battle had a decent night. He fouled out of this game, which is kind of funny. That means he's competing on defense. I think his defense has shown some uptick. I've watched him. He does help out around the basket. That's what I like, is that he's using his size to his advantage. And I think his foot speed, it's not tragic, it's not horrible, but it's not one of his strengths. But he is a big guy, and he's pretty physically strong. Like he has kind of almost a forward's body, I would say. And he can get in the paint, and he can box out, and he can compete and tap boards out. He was doing that last night. And thank God his shot recovered. So he had 9 points on 3 of 7 shooting, and all 9 of those points came from the 3-point line, where he was 3 of 5 from 3. So great job there. 2 rebounds, 1 assist, 0 steals, 0 blocks, 0 turnovers, and fouled out of the game in 23 minutes. So that's kind of funny, but I think a pretty strong performance from him. Off of the bench, I think this was one of the first games where the two-way guys and the secondary players did not have a fantastic game. So we'll start with Colin Castleton. I think that he had a really good first half, and then a bad second half. So it was a tale of two halves. He had 8 points on 3 of 10 shooting. He was 0 of 2 from 3, 2 of 2 from the line. He did have 12 rebounds with 9 offensive rebounds, so that's impressive. He was really getting his hands on balls, tapping it out, and being a presence under the basket. 2 assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks, and 5 turnovers, and that's kind of where I think the Raptors kind of lost the game. They put him and a bunch of other of the not as good players into the game at the end. There was a lot of uproar on social media. Oh, how could the Raptors do this? They rested their starters. They rested Poeltl and Scotty and played their scrubs. And he was one of the reasons they lost at the end. But in the first half, he did play pretty well. So not gonna, bash him too much. AJ Lawson had one of his, cold nights, which definitely helped the tank. He had 9 points on 14 shots. So again, with this guy, he is not shy. He is getting up shots. He knows what his role is. He's there as a scorer. He had 9 points, 14 shots, 1 of 6 from 3, 8 rebounds, and hey, 6 assists. He has not been a very good passer since he's been with the Raptors, but 6 assists is pretty impressive. 0 steals, 0 blocks, 1 turnover, but, not a fantastic game from him. Just the efficiency was not there. Orlando Robinson, I think, played good defense, but again, the finishing. He had 10 points on 4 of 12 shooting. He really struggles against size in the post. If it's not an open layup and he has to sort of lay the ball up around another center, it's not going in. And 4 of 12 shooting is not what you want to see. None of the guys off of the bench were efficient at all. So they kind of lost the game for the Raptors. 10 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 4 turnovers for Orlando Robinson. So not a great night. But this was a good game. I think that the Toronto Raptors in the starting lineup had a bunch of really positive performances. The projected rotation players, so let's look at that. They all started. Jamal Shead, Ochai Agbaji, Jakob Poeltl, Scotty Barnes, Jamison Battle. Those guys are probably going to be in the Toronto Raptors rotation next season, and they all had good games, various shades of good. So that's very positive. The Toronto Raptors tank plan is to place two-way guys and fringe rotation players and have those guys play major minutes, and then, you know, the other team plays real players and then you lose the game. That was the plan until the two-way players were playing too well. That said, they were playing against a cream puff schedule with some bad teams, the Wizards, the Utah Jazz, the 76ers. Those guys aren't very good, so the two-way guys shined a little bit more in those games. The Toronto Raptors played a real team last night. The Portland Trailblazers have some guys. They are not nakedly tanking. Kudos to them. They've got role players at every position that are, you know, strong. Klingon Simons is a good scorer. Shaden Sharp is having a breakout season. These guys all played over 30 minutes, their entire starting lineup. Denny Avdia, he is a real player. Tamani Kamara is another, you know, great find by their front office, and he looks like he's going to be, you know, a really toolsy two-way player for them. They have a lot of good players. With that said, Scoot Henderson didn't have a very good game. But yeah, anyway, the Toronto Raptors did what they needed to do to get the loss. I think that this was a tanking masterclass from Darko Rajakovic. Usually that's used as an insult, but in this game, like if you have to lose a game, if you're given orders by the front office to be like, listen, it would be better if we lose this game, this is exactly how I would do it as a coach. Start your best players, play them about half the game, keep it competitive. At the end of the game, just pull the ripcord, play your scrubs, and walk away with a loss. And that's what happened. So good job by him. The Toronto Raptors, they are doing a back-to-back. They're playing the Phoenix Suns tonight in Phoenix at 10 o'clock. The Phoenix Suns stink. I know they have two guys that were on the American national team this past year, the gold medal team, in Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Those two guys are Hall of Famers, right? You would think, hey, this should be a good basketball team. Their role players stink. And Bradley Beal is not the right player to put next to those two, and he is missing tons of games. He doesn't seem to give an S about it. He's just collecting a paycheck at this point. So it's super depressing. But the Toronto Raptors could lose this game because it is a back-to-back, it is an away game, and they will probably be playing some, you know, questionable lineups down the stretch. So let's tune in. We'll find out. This is kind of the stoppable force versus the very movable object, and we'll see which team is able to secure the L. I think the Raptors will be able to get the loss if they really put their mind to it, so we'll see tonight. But yeah, anyway, that is the episode. What do you think of Jeremiah Fears? Are you a fan of his? Do you like what he's been able to do as a freshman? Do you think he's going to fit on the Toronto Raptors? Let me know here in the comments and also on Twitter and Blue Sky, where you can reach me at Raps Report. I love talking to Toronto Raptors fans. We really are the best. Let's admit it. I love reading your comments. I love answering your questions. And if you haven't already, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel because it does help the channel grow. It helps the algorithm know to put this content out in front of other Raptors fans such as yourself. And as always, thank you for tuning in to Raptors Report, your source for in-depth Raptors content.